A young man in a formal suit appears against a background of green trees and flowers, addressing someone with the words Baron. A girl with red hair and green eyes, standing among flowers, asks excitedly if she is hated. The man is silent, and the girl reproachfully notes that he can't even answer. The girl screams in despair that her fiancé hates her, despite her request to calm down. The man loudly declares that he does not hate her. The girl is surprised by his words, and he swears that he does not hate her. The man adds that perhaps she is too young to marry him. The girl is perplexed and notes that there is only a 6-year age difference between her and the Baron. The illustration tells the story of how the emperor, by his decree, obliged Baron Adrian and Lady Aradia Sabier to enter into marriage. It is described that no one remained indifferent to the order, and it is explained that Baron Adrian received the title only a month ago thanks to his feat. Lady Sabier, the Duke's youngest daughter and the Emperor's niece, grew up in luxury as the only princess of the empire, and their engagement was the talk of the country. At the house of the Duke of Sabier, they discuss how their daughter can marry a heartless soldier. One of the family members is also outraged by the fact that the groom comes from a low class. The second man tries to call for calm, reminding him that this is the Emperor's order, although he finds it difficult to accept. Lady Sabier calmly declares to her father and brother that she has no objection to this marriage, since the Emperor promised to find her the best partner. She confidently says that she agrees to meet with Baron Adrian. She later recalls that she said this, and the next day her carriage was already heading to the Emperor's palace. Inwardly, she doubts why the meeting must happen so soon and tries to calm down. As her carriage drives along the avenue, she reflects on the Baron as a brave soldier and a man well-versed in politics. She reassures herself that the Baron is a worthy man and only 6 years older than her. She reflects that a Baron serving in the Navy would most likely spend most of his time at sea and, in her mind, would be tanned and have a rough temperament. She wonders if she can create the family of her dreams with such a man. The girl sees the elegant and handsome Baron Adrian for the first time and is amazed by his appearance. Hearing his name, the girl repeats to herself in surprise, Baron Adrian, and does not believe that it is really him. She is indignant to herself that such beautiful people are recruited into the Empire's army and not evaluated based on other qualities. The entire family and guests, including the main characters, gather at a long table in a luxurious hall. Emperor Edeltine Bjorn, beaming with goodwill, addresses everyone present at the table. The emperor says that the couple would make a great couple, as if they were made for each other, and the parents ask why they were seated at different ends of the table. The emperor suddenly turns his attention to the girl, asking why she looks pale and feels unwell. The girl replies with a smile that she is fine and is more worried about His Majesty, since he does not tolerate the heat well. The emperor thanks Eri with a smile for her concern and jokes that the entire empire is worried about him, while at the table they advise not to overindulge in drinks. The emperor invites everyone to skip the formalities and have a drink together over dinner. The girl with a blush on her cheeks reflects that the official order will only come into effect in a month. But Baron Adrian has already started working, and he even has a beautiful voice. Despite the fact that this is a marriage of convenience, the heroine believes in the possibility of finding true love, remembering the happy union of her parents. She notes that even her second brother was able to overcome class differences and married for love the daughter of a white baron. The heroine dreams that one day she too will experience true love, enjoying the warm family atmosphere at a picnic with her brothers. Sitting at the table in the company of the baron, the girl realizes that she is overwhelmed with emotions, and this is, perhaps, love at first sight. Embarrassed, she remarks that she has never met such a wonderful man, and with such a face, other circumstances of the marriage are no longer important to her. During the conversation, it is suggested that it will take more than 2 months to prepare for the wedding, and the family discusses the possibility of setting a date for the end of May, which the heroine is happy about. The baron calmly and seriously addresses the emperor, beginning an important conversation. At the festive table, the emperor suddenly suggests reconsidering the possibility of this marriage. The emperor asks what exactly is meant, and asks not to say that someone doesn't like Eri, while the girl internally asks for an explanation. The young man says that marriage is a once-in-a-lifetime thing and should be with someone you love, which makes the girl feel embarrassed and almost in tears. Aries' father angrily asks if the groom is making excuses because he didn't like his daughter. The girl is desperately wondering how she can resolve the current situation. She hesitantly raises her hand and asks if she can ask something. The girl can hardly contain her emotions and hopefully asks a direct question. Does the groom really already have someone he loves? Confessing her excitement and confusion. Edward is internally worried and anxiously asks someone. The Baron is lost in his thoughts and does not understand what exactly the problem is, wondering if he said something wrong. After this personal meeting, he realizes that Aerie is beautiful, gentle, and will undoubtedly be loved by many worthy young men. The hero clasps his hands and internally asks why such a girl would marry a rude soldier like him. He adds that she is too young, and again, the question arises whether he really loves someone else. The character's internal monologue, he has no one, and a meaningless engagement without feelings is doomed to break up, because due to his service, there was no interest or communication with women. He admits that he never even had a chance for a relationship, but suggests continuing to discuss the engagement and leaving the organization to the officials. Night falls over the building, illuminated by the windows of the large palace. In another room, a girl is sewing and painfully thinking about what to do next. She is visited by disturbing thoughts. Maybe there is something wrong with her. The maid Martha wonders if the groom really turned out to be as rude and uncouth as he seemed before. The girl denies it, but to herself, she wonders how such a beautiful man can be rude. Because it's impossible. In her imagination, Baron Adrian seems so perfect, as if God himself created him in 3 days and 3 nights, accidentally adding too much beauty. Aerie, confused, turns to Edward, screaming why they should be the ones to link their lives. She realizes that her embroidery is so terrible that it hurts to look at. The girl panics and thinks that the Baron imagined her differently before the meeting and was perhaps disappointed in her appearance. Aerie shyly asks the maid if she can ask her a question about her attractiveness. The maid is surprised in response, and Aerie accuses the groom of being blind because he did not notice her charm. Martha is full of admiration for her mistress, proclaiming her charms beyond words. Aerie asks Martha incredulously if she is just trying to cheer her up. The girl sadly notes that the Baron did not show the slightest interest in her during dinner. Aerie is alarmed to realize that she might end up marrying without love and spending her life with an indifferent man. At the funeral, she sadly reflects on her dream of a warm family and the fact that life ends at a cold grave. Edward stands in the dim light, holding a white daylily and wondering if he will mourn Aerie at all. Iridia, suddenly awakened from her despair, returns to reality, stunned by her own confusion. In a rage, she orders Martha to throw away the embroidery and bring the stationery along with the quill to start over. Enveloped in a flame of determination, she orders herself to conquer him at any cost. With the seacoast as a backdrop, the question arises as to how their scheduled date went. The message in the Baron's hand contains words about how his bride is spoken of as a beautiful flower of high society. The lieutenant, with slight irony, reminds Edward of his role as his deputy and asks about the results. In the office, Edward learns that the meeting did not go as planned, and the bride was probably terribly dissatisfied. At the table, he listens with irritation to the endless praise of his qualities, feeling that he is being ignored. Holding the cigarette butt in his fingers, the Baron announces that he is leaving the key position in the fleet to his subordinate. The Navy is described as a place where it is difficult for an aristocrat to gain recognition, and the Baron is instructed to organize everything in such a way as to protect the honor of the Emperor. The Baron answers with restraint, "I understand," and reflects that this marriage looks more advantageous from a political point of view than for the sake of the girl. He folds his hands in front of him and thinks that the opinion of the parties when concluding a marriage does not matter. Lieutenant Colonel Henhelm asks, with a slight smile, what the expression on the Baron's face is and whether everything is all right. Major Livia, Edward's adjutant, enters with a letter and asks what is the matter. A letter with a seal lands on the table, and the major announces that it is a letter from Lady Herodia Sabier. Baron Edward silently takes the envelope, sitting at his desk and watching it. The lieutenant colonel and the major stand shyly behind the Baron, asking if he plans to remain in place any longer. Henhelm offers to prepare a bouquet of flowers, and the Baron mentally orders him to stop this stupid chatter. The lieutenant colonel tries to fix the Baron's hair and offers his help, but he rudely replies, "Enough." The Baron announces that he is leaving and allows his subordinates to go home if they have finished their work. Henhelm exclaims in surprise that he never would have thought he would live to see the day when he would be spying on the personal life of a vice admiral. The assistants notice that the Baron carefully hid the letter from the lady, although he usually burns or throws away correspondence. Both officers smile and note the Baron's unusually careful attitude towards the letter. There is a feeling in the air that spring has finally come to the Vice Admiral's heart as Baron Edward Adrian reads the message. In the letter, Iridia asks how the Baron is doing under the warm spring sun. She politely asks if he could visit Sona's boutique on Ionia Street if he is not too busy. The letter ends with Rachel's blessing and Erodia Sabier's signature. The moment Edward opens the door to the boutique, he realizes something important. He realizes that this place is an unfamiliar battlefield, unlike any he has fought on before. Edward's life was always full of worries. He had only one sword left, which he inherited from his father. He risked his life on the battlefield, writing his name into history. The luxurious and unfamiliar world amazes him with its magnificence. The girls look at him with admiration, and he thinks about escaping. An attempt to escape unnoticed fails when he is met by a maid. He explains that he came by invitation and gives his name as Edward Adrian. The maid informs him that the lady is already waiting for him. In the great hall, Edward is greeted by a woman with bright red hair among the guests. Baron Adrian is introduced, and the lady with red hair takes notice of him. The red-haired girl apologizes for inviting Edward so suddenly. Edward replies that there is no problem and learns that the girl has an engagement dress fitting today that must match his suit. The girl expresses hope that the fitting will go perfectly, and her escort invites Edward to come in. The girl is confused when she notices that Edward has left and worries that she may have been acting strangely. The maid convinces the girl that she was excellent, and she notes with relief that Edward's suit is not yet completely ready. The girl happily realizes that the preparation is complete. Edward appears in a luxurious white suit. Its beauty is compared to a national treasure. The girl is happy and mentally rejoices that this man is now hers. Determined, she promises to make Edward fall in love with her. When asked about his wishes, Edward replies that he has nothing to add, but the girl remembers about the rings to try on. The girl thinks that the rings should be in the hall, and her assistant guesses that, in fact, she wants to spend more time with Edward. The assistant says that the rings are not ready, but they can bring something similar for trying on, and asks if the girl will be able to stand because of the heavy dress. Edward catches the staggering girl and asks for forgiveness. The girl thanks Edward with a blush, and the maids decide to leave them alone. The girl wonders what the Baron is thinking about and decides not to remain silent any longer. She is about to say something important, but she is nervous about it. The girl apologizes for last night. The girl explains that she often speaks directly because of her interactions with men, and apologizes if she says something wrong. She asks if Edward is actually disgusted by her, and is confidently told that he is not. The girl notes with relief that if the engagement concluded by the Emperor were broken, a scandal would break out, and apologizes for her harshness. She asks not to worry about this and smiles. Edward asks if there is anything she would like to do before the wedding. He explains that she is too young to marry, and would like to fulfill as many of her wishes as possible. The girl is surprised and wonders whether his words were sincere, and whether her youth is the only reason. She speculates that Edward does not understand high society, or even realize how attractive he is, calling him the most distinguished bachelor. The girl easily agrees that he is not familiar with high society, and asks the Baron himself about it. Reflecting at a table among the greenery, she comes to the conclusion that after marriage, women will have more freedom. She adds that this does not mean that women forget about fidelity, because she will only look at him. She then asks Edward to be faithful to her too. The girl wonders, confused, whether he understood what she really wanted to say. Edward, with a serious look, promises to carve her words into his heart, but the girl understands that he completely misunderstood her. She decides that it's okay, because being inexperienced in love is not bad, and they don't need to rush. From that moment on, she is determined to do everything to make the Baron fall in love with her, using her status as a bride to the fullest. Eridia vows to be the first and last woman the Baron will ever love. A young man in military uniform is surprised to learn that Eridia is engaged. The man he approached realizes that he knew nothing about the engagement. The young man excitedly asks the captain what's going on. The captain announces that due to urgent circumstances, he is going on leave to deal with this bastard baron himself. A girl in men's clothes and a cap looks out from around the corner, hoping that no one will recognize anything. A maid catches a girl dressed in men's clothing and asks where she's going. The girl is surprised that she was discovered and asks the maid Marta how she found out. Martha explains that, thanks to her skills as an experienced maid, she only needs to look at the face to understand when something is up to something. In response to the question of where she is heading dressed like that, the girl admits that she is going to meet her brother Fabian. Martha wonders why she needs a disguise for this, and the girl explains that every time she wants to go out, everyone starts to fuss. Considering the girl's health, Marta decides to accompany her, to which she happily agrees. A few hours later, they learn that their brother is not home, and the girl asks where he might be. After learning that her brother is a vice admiral, they go to the fortress, where she is met by a visitor. The girl says that she has a visitor, but Edward, being in the midst of training, asks to wait in the reception area if it is not urgent. The girl reports that the visitor claims to be from the Imperial Guard and is trying to force his way inside. An enraged man with brown hair, held down by two people, screams the name Edward Hadrian. Edward doubts that this is a messenger from His Majesty, and his hand falls on the hilt of his sword. Edward goes out into the yard and asks the visitor what brings him. A man with brown hair asks if he is Baron Hadrian and receives an affirmative answer. He rips off his glove and introduces himself as Fabian. Fabian declares that he has long admired Lady Sabier, which shocks those watching the scene. Fabian, in a fit of passion, challenges Edward to a duel to the death. Edward calmly suggests settling the matter peacefully, but Fabian insists on a duel, calling him a coward. Edward calmly draws his sword. He suggests that Fabian start the fight first. Fabian gladly accepts the challenge to a duel. He is surprised that Edward, whom he considered a sissy, dodged all his attacks. Edward, having blocked the blow, mentally notes that his opponent is not bad. Fabian and Edward continue to exchange blows in a rapid fashion. Fabian is furious and demands that Edward break up with Aridia. Edward calmly refuses and goes on the attack himself. Fabian is amazed by Edward's speed and quickness. Viewers note that the night is not bad and lasted longer than they thought. The young man with white hair anticipates that things will only get more interesting from here. Another viewer complains that the duel cost him a month's salary. A group of spectators excitedly discuss the bet, and one of them declares that he is betting that the vice admiral will knock his opponent down in 10 minutes. The two assistants admit in surprise that they thought it was easy money, but it turned out to be not so simple. A woman appears on screen surrounded by hanging flowers, and the voiceover suggests that, in addition to the bet, everyone is dying of curiosity about how seriously the vice admiral is taking the duel, and it is she who finds herself at the center of the rumors. Surrounded by flowers, someone behind the scenes reflects on her beauty and admits that he would like to meet her in person at least once. The white-haired officer happily informs her that today she is lucky because she will finally meet the mysterious young lady. On the steps of the palace, an embarrassed girl smiles and introduces herself as Herodia Sabier. Herodia, puzzled by their reaction, wonders why they are so surprised by her appearance. In the midst of the duel, someone's voice shouts out what they are doing, interrupting the fight. Edward, holding the sword, thinks thoughtfully and wonders if they really know each other. Fabian angrily asks Edie, who ran away to him dressed in his clothes, and Herodia embarrassedly realizes that their relationship is deeper than just acquaintance. Herodia seriously tells her brother that she will die of shame because of him. Introducing Fabian Sabier, second son of the ducal house of Sabier. Sometime later, at the Duke of Sabier's estate, Fabian cannot believe that his sister has left for the naval headquarters. Fabian asks how she got there, and Herodia proudly replies that she drove the carriage herself. Fabian is outraged that she even dares to talk about admiring him when she usually mocks him. Herodia asks her brother if he has properly apologized to the Baron. Herodia admits that she was in such a hurry that she was unable to properly prepare for the apology. Fabian suggests setting up a formal meeting to apologize, but is immediately dismissed by the idea. Herodia sternly warns her brother not to even think about talking to her until he has properly apologized to the Baron. While waiting for the Baron, Eridia ponders his arrival thoughtfully. The girl thinks that Kias will return closer to dinner. Fabian is already home, and she tries to remember who else should come. The elder brother, Hester Sabier, the third son of the ducal house of Sabier, appears. The girl happily throws herself into Hester's arms, saying how much she missed him. Suddenly, she remembers something important and gets scared, hiding behind his back. It is explained that before the wedding, the Duke of Sabier already had 3 sons. After the previous Duke of Sabier, the current Duke's older brother, suddenly dies. The current Duke of Sabier adopts his brother's children and raises them. He raises his adopted children as his own, without showing favoritism. Eventually, the boys accept the newborn girl as their real sister. The girl sadly notes that each of the brothers is problematic in his own way. A man with a scar on his cheek thinks that someone is being too protective of Erodia and asks to tell him to leave him alone. The second brother smiles and warmly admits that he missed Erodia. The girl thinks that Hester won't agree so easily and wants to ask him about it casually, clinging to him. The brother asks if Erodia is feeling better. She replies that it was just a common cold and nothing serious. The brother wonders why he was forbidden to visit Erodia. She objects that she was worried, and he justifies himself by saying that he didn't want her to get sick, although in fact all this time he was just reading books. Erodia doubts his excuses, but her brother still insists that the reading was not going well because of the excitement about their meeting. Erodia takes the plunge and starts a conversation with Hestar, saying that she has something she wants to discuss. She asks him what he thinks about spring coming, and what if she suddenly fell in love. The brother is shocked to learn that Erodia may have fallen in love. She awkwardly justifies that it's all just hypothetical, and Hestar, upset, wants to end the conversation. One of the brothers tells the other not to scare him with such news, because Eri is getting engaged soon. The second brother, looking concerned, demands to know the details of when and with whom Eri will be engaged, to which he receives the answer that her fiancé is Edward Adrian, and the event is scheduled for the end of next month. One of the brothers says that this guy will come to their house today. Another brother asks if everything necessary for the meeting has been prepared, and receives the answer that he has obtained the strongest liqueur in the entire empire. Erodia is horrified to think what her brothers are planning, and fears that they want to harm her fiancé. Erodia decides to take action, thinking she has no other choice. She runs, repeating to herself that she must warn the Baron. Erodia hurries to tell her fiancé to be careful with her brothers. The guy supports Erodia and holds her tightly by the shoulders, and she is a little embarrassed. The groom, looking serious and a little worried, asks Erodia if she is okay. Erodia is horrified, anxiously thinking about what is happening. She recalls that at their last meeting, she was wearing a terrible outfit and was embarrassed. Erodia enthusiastically assures herself that today she will definitely meet her fiancé as she should. But from the very beginning, she feels that everything is not going according to plan, and she does stupid things. Erodia gathers her courage and decides that she still has a chance to make things right, saying that he arrived earlier than expected. During a thunderstorm, the girl awkwardly remarks to her fiancé that the weather is great today. The guy agrees, and Erodia is surprised by his calmness and invites him to look at the living room so as not to stand around doing nothing. Having met the brothers, Erodia suddenly remembers that she forgot to warn her fiancé about them. Alone at the table on a rainy night, Erodia wonders how her life came to this. She feels abandoned as she watches her fiancé and brothers having fun together while she is alone. An hour ago, the brothers were discussing their upcoming meeting over dinner, sitting in a tense atmosphere against the backdrop of a fire. Erodia panics and thinks that what is happening is too embarrassing, especially because she and the Baron were seated far apart. The Baron hands his glass to one of the brothers, apologizing for the last time and offering the drink as a sign of reconciliation. The brothers accept the apology with a smile and drink as a sign of friendship, but privately they think that the Baron has been caught. One of the brothers thinks with disdain that some Baron is not worth the little finger of their Erodia and offers to fill his glass. The brother decides to make him drink to show his true colors and insistently offers him another glass. The Baron holds his glass with a smile, while one of the brothers mentally gloats, suggesting that he smile while he can. Despite the amount of alcohol he had consumed, the Baron's mood only improved, and he wondered why he was still conscious. The brothers notice that the Baron's face has turned red, and decide that this is their chance to learn about his past. One of the brothers asks the Baron if he learned to drink from his father, to which he replies that he learned while serving in the Navy. At sea, the Baron tells us that he entered the service in accordance with the will of his father, who was also a sailor, and because of the romance of sea life. The brothers, touched by his devotion to family ties, ask in confusion at what age he entered the service. Upon hearing that the Baron entered the service at 16, the brother is shocked and assumes that he passed the exams to enter the Naval Academy on the first try. The Baron modestly replies that he was simply lucky, while his brother is amazed at his achievement, since the competition to get into the Naval Academy is the toughest. One of the brothers excitedly asks the Baron to tell about his role in the war, and the second mentally scolds him for helping the Baron boast. The brother tries to change the subject by asking about the battle strategy, but immediately stipulates that this is probably classified information. The Baron explains that the operation was a success thanks to a geography book, surprising his brother, who realizes that the rare book has become unarmed. The brothers are amazed to realize that Baron Edward Adrian is a hero who has lifted the shadow of war over the Empire and become a vice admiral. The older brother watches his excited younger brothers with a grin and thinks what a pity that their plan failed. He sips wine, thinking that the Baron was not so simple and that his recognition by the stern emperor was entirely expected. The Baron, with a glass of wine, stares at something, arousing someone's curiosity. The brothers persuade the Baron to stay, saying that they have free rooms, and warn him that he will regret it if he leaves now. The elder brother tells the Baron that he will take care of the younger ones, and he can go. The elder brother says goodbye to the Baron until the next meeting and calls his younger brothers to him. Grinning, the older brother asks Eridia to see the guest out. As a result, seeing the Baron off, the upset Eridia realizes that she was never able to say a word to him. She complains that every time she tried to speak, her brothers would intervene and interrupt her. By the end of the evening, the brothers seemed to have forgotten about her existence altogether, but she was glad that she didn't have to protect the Baron from them. The Baron embraces Erodia and officially declares that from now on, any attack on him will be considered an attack on her. Erodia bites her handkerchief in despair, lamenting that she never imagined that she wouldn't be able to talk to him. Erodia sheepishly asks the Baron if he was bored during his visit. The Baron replies that he felt terrible, but his tone makes it clear that he is joking. The Baron, with a gentle smile, asks Erodia to tell him about the Sabier family next time. Erodia covers her mouth with her hands in shock, thinking to herself that this is the first time she's seen him smile so genuinely. The girl wonders when she will be able to remain calm when she sees his face, remembering his image in different situations. At night, someone reminds us of the upcoming appointment of an admiral of the Navy. The speaker adds that the emperor will also be present, and that one must look impeccable, as befits a crown prince. A woman's hand with an elegant ring and bracelet adjusts her outfit, and a voice says that she, too, should get ready. An elegant blonde lady in a luxurious dress, with pearls and rubies, joyfully notes that the family will finally be reunited. At the ceremony, someone comments that he heard about the engagement of the man appointed to the post of Vice Admiral to Lady Sabier. Erodia thinks that even though the Baron is a war hero, he is just a simple Baron, and the Duke's daughter was here on the Emperor's orders. So the Duke is devastated. She smiles and whispers that she simply wants to become Erodia Adrian. Nearby, a woman in a plaid dress notices that she is not alone here. Erodia hears someone asking if this woman could be a family member of the officer who is being promoted today. She catches whispers behind her back that they are discussing her only because of her dress. The girl is inwardly indignant that these people only know how to boast about their status. Erodia smiles warmly and comments on how beautiful the weather is today. The neighbor assumes that she is here because someone in the family has been promoted and congratulates her. Erodia modestly replies that they are not a family yet and politely asks for forgiveness. The servant brings her a glass of lemonade and tells her that it is her drink. Erodia notices that only one drink has been brought between the two of them and asks for the lady to be served first. The butler sheepishly promises to bring the lady another drink soon. The servant rushes to press the call button when Erodia again demands that the lady be served first. The agitated attendant panics, apologizes, and vows to serve the lady immediately. Erodia apologizes to her neighbor for the inconvenience, and she reassures her and tells her not to worry. The girl clarifies that she does not want to cause inconvenience, and the neighbor again assures that everything is fine. Aridia proudly raises her hands to the sky, declaring that she is quite an influential figure in this country. She puts on her funny binoculars and happily exclaims that it seems like everything is starting, feeling 100% ready. The knights line up with swords at the ready as Baron Edward Adrian enters in a ceremonial march. A voice from the rostrum proclaims the appointment of Edward Hadrian as Vice Admiral of the Navy and the blessing of the gods for his new position. The girl with long red hair happily points at Baron Adrian, wanting to show everyone her fiancé. She smiles and reflects that if it weren't for the Baron, it is unknown when the war would have ended. The girl is surprised to notice that the Baron is looking at her. The Baron approaches in full dress uniform, and the interior scene shows him worried and wondering what to say. The girl, at a loss, decides that she will first simply congratulate the Baron. The girl repeats to herself that she just needs to congratulate him, and her aunt is the first to congratulate the Baron on his hard work. The aunt notices that the young lady seems to know the Baron and assumes that they have come together. The aunt introduces herself and says that she is his aunt and her name is Serena. Her behavior shows how sweetly His Majesty's niece behaves. The blonde and the boy watch and comment that she really likes the Baron. The story is about how emotions are very strong at a young age, and a girl can be very sensitive. So there was concern about how she would react to a sudden marriage proposal. The blonde with the red ribbon smiles and thinks that now her heart feels lighter. The man with long blonde hair says he didn't expect such care for Ari. The blonde, with a serious look, says that she will take care of her niece herself and urges her to watch her behavior. The Empress is indignant that this is too much, and the man orders her to return to the inner palace, since her duties are finished. The Empress, sitting on the throne, reflects that His Majesty has always been like this. The Empress clutches the necklace in her hand and thinks that even now His Majesty has not changed. A boy with different eyes turns to his mother. The Empress says it's time for them to return. The Baron asks Aridia if she likes it. Aridia happily replies that she likes it very much, and the Baron says that there will be fireworks tonight, and it will be even more beautiful. Against the backdrop of the sunset sky, there is a conversation about whether it is normal that the aunt was let go so easily, but there is confidence that she has always been a quiet person. Aridia laughs a little sheepishly and says that she feels better now. The Baron claims that his aunt has taken a great liking to her and remarks that there are no people who would not like her. The girl is amazed to realize that perhaps the Baron himself likes her, which makes her heart beat faster. The fireworks begin, and Erodia and Edward look up at the sky in delight. The girl mentally thanks the fireworks, because otherwise the Baron would probably have heard her heartbeat. For the first time in her life, she feels something like this, telling the Baron that the fireworks are magnificent. Aridia takes a sharp step, is surprised, and meets the Baron's gaze. She suddenly feels that her feet are not touching the ground, and looks around in surprise. The Baron desperately screams her name, reaching out his hand to her. The Baron hugs Aridia, whom he saved, tightly, and she clings to him. Aridia is shocked to realize that the Baron has just addressed her by name for the first time. Aridia, looking out the window, doubts whether it was a dream, but she still hears the Baron's voice in her head calling her name. She tells her maid that the Baron has never called her that before. The maid suddenly addresses her, causing her to cry out in surprise. The maid reports that she has received a letter from the inner palace. Aridia reads the letter impatiently, mentally skipping the formal greetings in order to quickly get to the essence. The maid watches with concern as Erodia, confused, forces herself to get to the point of the letter. The letter invites Herodias and her fiancé to come to the inner palace. Aridia smiles as she looks forward to visiting the inner palace on a fine day. She wonders how she should start the conversation when meeting the Baron. The Baron suddenly appears behind a confused Aridia, catching her off guard by asking if there was something she wanted to say. The Baron addresses Aridia by name, and she, confused and agitated, cannot utter a word. The Baron offers to announce their arrival, but Erodia panics when she realizes that they are already in the inner palace. Aridia mentally urges herself to pull herself together, reminding herself to be strong in the inner palace. The herald announces the arrival of Lady Sabier and Baron Adrian to His Majesty in the magnificent hall. The Empress greets Erodia with a smile. Aridia, walking arm in arm with the Baron, thanks him for the invitation, while the Baron asks them to pass. The Empress explains that she invited them because they are important ladies to her, and she was eager to see them. Erodia politely replies with a smile that it is an honor for them, but secretly thinks with doubt that the Empress really wanted to see her. As Erodia looks at the Empress's glittering jewelry, she notes to herself that she clearly dressed so extravagantly to dominate. The Empress introduces her guests, first Countess Havel, and then the Marchioness of Cheshire, who compliments the Countess. The Empress introduces Viscountess Dallas, a girl with light green hair. Eridia is surprised to recognize a familiar girl in the Viscountess. Eridia suspects that the Empress invited the Viscountess to corner her, as she would normally not even look at such a girl. Suddenly, a man with red hair appears and says that it has been a long time since they saw each other, and the Baron wonders what the Empress is up to. The man approaches Viscountess Dallas and addresses her, while Erodia and the Baron watch from the sidelines. Viscountess Dallas replies that it has been a long time, and then clenches her fist, mentally calling out Baron Adrian's name. Eridia panics as the atmosphere in the room becomes too tense. Eridia, in the reflection of her teacup, reflects that the Empress would not dare interfere with a marriage arranged by the Emperor. The Empress smiles mysteriously, and Erodia wonders what she is trying to do then. Eridia, with a worried look, realizes that the situation is very strange. The Viscountess suddenly breaks the cup, exclaiming that something is clearly going on here and begging for forgiveness. The Baron, his hand stained with spilled tea, calmly asks if anyone was hurt. Eridia anxiously asks the Baron if he is okay. The Empress sarcastically comments on what a rich reunion it is, and Erodia suggests that the Viscountess was overexcited by her meeting with the Baron. While the maid offers to bring clean clothes, Eridia ponders the Empress's words about reunification. Eridia is confused and wonders if the Baron and the Viscountess know each other and what their relationship is. The Baron takes Erodia by the hand and, refusing help, tells the Empress that they are leaving. The Empress asks why they are leaving so quickly, assuming that the Baron and the Viscountess have something to discuss, but the Baron replies that he does not want to cause trouble. The Baron politely apologizes for his sudden departure. The Empress smiles and remarks that since they insist, she will not stop them, hoping that the Baron and Viscountess enjoyed this little reunion. Eridia and the Baron walk down the palace corridor, and she wonders if they can really leave so easily. Eridia gathers her courage and asks if the Baron has any questions, admitting that the Empress's words puzzled her. The Baron says she might get angry, but Erodia insists everything is fine and just wants to know the truth. The Baron begins the story with the words 5 years ago. It turns out that the Baron was engaged to Viscountess Dallas. The engagement between the Baron and the current Viscountess Dallas was arranged. The story ends with the bride's father, who never loved the Baron, being blinded by greed and ignoring the original agreement, recklessly accepting the offer of the wealthy Dallas family. The engagement was broken off just 3 months before the wedding. Eridia is surprised to hear about the broken engagement. The Baron explains that at the time, he had just been appointed an officer in the Navy and was often on business trips, and since there was a war going on, he considered this to be understandable. Eridia is indignant and says that this is completely unacceptable because the Baron fought to protect the Empire and the people dear to him. The Baron looks away thoughtfully, wondering if Eridia is on his side. The Baron says that this is what it's like when you have support. Eridia thinks with annoyance that the more she learns, the angrier she becomes. She finds the situation completely ridiculous and wonders if the Empress and the other ladies knew about all this. The girl understands that they had planned to mock her from the very beginning, including the Empress and the Viscountess. An angry Erodia exclaims that her anger is growing stronger with each passing second and calls the Baron her fiancé. Lilia Sabir asks in surprise if she had met the Baron's former fiancé, assuming it was just a coincidence. She notes with relief that fortunately, this was just the Empress's plan, and everything turned out not to be as dramatic as it could have been. Eridia, lowering her head, says that there is no need to worry so much about relief. She screams through tears that she can't, that it's terribly hard for her. Viscountess Dallas notes to herself that Eridia is incredibly beautiful. The Viscountess reflects on how elegant and charming Erodia is. The heroine admits that she feels like a child compared to the Viscountess. A flashback is shown where the Emperor, on a whim, makes an engagement, saying that people should be married. I remember how the Viscountess's brothers treated the Baron terribly. Aridia despairs and thinks that if this continues, she will not be able to marry him. The girl with red hair is confused, thinking that she doesn't know what the Baron feels for her. The girl is emotional at the table, and another girl is watching her and thinks that she really likes the Baron. A young man with a bouquet of flowers wonders what the girl is doing, since she does not open the door for a long time. A guy hands a girl a bouquet of flowers, and she asks admiringly if it's for her, and he says that he chose them because she loves these flowers. The girl watches the couple in love and thinks to herself that they are real lovebirds, feeling lonely and cold. The girl suddenly realizes something important and wonders why she didn't figure it out before. She is thinking about how to give him a gift, because she has never given him anything before. She remembers that there is a hunting festival coming up soon, which seems like a good opportunity for a gift. She is glad that the situation is developing just perfectly for her plan. Thinking about a gift, she cannot decide what to choose and thinks about a brooch for a scarf. The girl looks at the man in the vest and white shirt, thinking about the gift option. Cufflinks. She thinks that he looks good in everything, which makes choosing a gift difficult. The girl understands that the gift must be meaningful and truly touch him. She notices an unusual shining pendant with a blue stone in the shop window, which attracts her attention. The girl's face lights up with joy, and she realizes that she has found the perfect gift. She decides that a beautiful pendant will adorn the scabbard of his sword. The girl imagines herself handing the pendant to the man, wishing him victory at the hunting festival. In her imagination, she hears the man thanking her for the gift and promising to dedicate his victory and glory to her. The girl suddenly becomes embarrassed and realizes that this fantasy is too idealized. Thinking that this does not happen, she is suddenly distracted by the salesman asking if she needs help, and she is brought back to reality. The girl in the hat and glasses regrets that she got too carried away by fantasies and remembers that she came to the store for a pendant. The salesperson asks the girl to wait a bit because there is another customer being served in front of her, and she becomes embarrassed, realizing that she is not the only one in the store. A blonde customer asks the seller if this is the right product he wanted. The girl asks to wrap the pendant with a blue ribbon so that it matches the color of the stone. The girl suddenly suspects that the buyer might take exactly the pendant she needs. She checks and is surprised to realize that this is indeed the very pendant she wanted to buy. The seller asks what's the matter, seeing the girl's confusion. She, embarrassed, admits that her request is impolite, but for her this pendant is extremely important. The blonde buyer thinks about it, says that he has no particular reason to buy this particular pendant, but hesitates. The buyer wonders why the girl is trying so hard, disguising herself and asking to give up the pendant, asking her a direct question. The girl insistently confirms that the pendant is very important to her when the guy clarifies its significance. She explains that she was tasked with buying this gift for an important person of her mistress's, and if she fails, she will simply be thrown out. She humbly asks the guy for generosity, and he listens to her thoughtfully. The guy asks if her owner really wants this particular pendant, and the girl happily confirms his words. He seems to understand the situation and comes to some conclusion. The guy smiles and declares that he will never give her this pendant. The girl is shocked by his answer, and he adds that, to his greatest regret, he himself really liked this pendant. He says that he is very sorry, but adds with a smile that it is none of his business, and that these are other people's problems. The girl is shocked by his behavior, and in her thoughts calls him a vile creature. She thinks that he could have refused from the very beginning, but instead he gave her hope only to cruelly take it away, although she understands that it is not his fault. The girl with red hair thinks that the blonde's actions are simply beyond good and evil. She approaches the gentleman and offers to pay double the price for the pendant. The seller notices that the pendant is even reflected in her eyes when she begs him to sell it to her. The blonde, covering his mouth with his hand, thinks how funny she is. He notes that a moment ago she was modest, but now she is behaving insolently, and he has no choice. The blonde asks if she wants to settle the matter with money, and the girl confirms that her mistress agrees to any amount. They both put pressure on the seller, demanding that he make a decision on who to sell the pendant to. The seller panics and thinks that he is not the one who should be solving such issues and is in despair. The scene shifts to the naval headquarters, showing a view of the sea and seagulls. The esteemed baron sits at the table and reads a letter. The red-haired girl writes a letter to the Baron, in which she hopes for his well-being, and admits that she wrote to him to relieve her melancholy. The Baron reads the letter in which the girl thanks him for his trust, but regrets that she ultimately lost her composure. He laughs when he reaches the line where she asks him not to think that she is disappointed in him. As he gets to the point of looking forward to meeting him at the hunting festival, someone knocks on the door and asks permission to enter. The collected and calm Baron allows the visitor to enter. The newcomer reports that the army is prepared according to orders, and notes that the Baron must have been busy with tactical training and preparation. The Baron asks in surprise what preparations are being discussed, and learns that they are talking about preparations for a hunting festival. He is reminded that this will be the first official event he will attend with Lady Sabier. The entire empire is immersed in preparations for the holiday, which is held to mark the end of the war and to wish for prosperity. It is also a grand event dedicated to honoring war heroes and publicizing their exploits. The Baron sits in his office and, looking tensely into the distance, remembers the upcoming event and asks what exactly needs to be prepared. The bespectacled advisor energetically lists three main reasons why this year's hunting festival is especially important. The same advisor urges the Baron not to waste a second and to immediately go to the studio so that Lady Sabier looks magnificent. The little helper in dark glasses vows to live up to high expectations and declares that they still have a lot of work to do. The assembled people make their way to the exit, shouting forward in one voice and preparing for action. The Baron, seeing the city so lively, sincerely feels that the war is truly over. Stepping outside, he realizes that he is now focused on the internal affairs of the empire and suddenly meets Herodias. Stopping in the crowd, the Baron thinks that he has been thinking about her more and more lately and wonders when it started. He remembers that at first his thoughts were about a young lady who was too good for him, but now new, bolder feelings arise in his thoughts. The Baron realizes that all he sees around him is her dazzling smile. The Baron thinks that, unlike other aristocrats, the lady is always unpretentious and full of life. In disguise, the seller realizes that every time he sees her kindness, he feels an overwhelming feeling of affection for her. The Baron admits that her unpredictable nature can be a nuisance at times and notices her mustache. The seller, confused, asks why the Baron is here. 30 minutes ago, the seller begged the owner to give him the pendant. The shop owner demands an immediate decision on who to sell the pendant to, pointing out that there is only one copy available. The seller claims that the pendant was taken straight from his hands, so he will sell it to the Baron. The Baron runs away in shock, exclaiming that this cannot be and asking not to be disturbed. The girl comes to her senses, decides not to despair, and find a better gift by ringing the bell. She thinks all is lost, but then the Baron suddenly appears. She is confused as to how to explain why he is dressed like that. The blonde advisor notices with concern that something is wrong with the Baron. The girl covers her face with her hands and admits that she wants to dig a hole and bury herself in it. The young man indignantly exclaims that the girl is the daughter of the Duke of Sabaye, and she insists that everyone pretend that they did not notice anything. The salesman in the sales room hesitantly asks how the Baron would like to pay for the gloves. The Baron takes out the money and agrees to pay, learning that the gloves cost 50 rubles. The girl exclaims, "Wait a minute," and demands to check the final price with the seller. With horror, she realizes that the price is actually 50 rubles and suspects an attempt to deceive the Baron. The Baron questions the quality of the gloves' leather, but the seller solemnly asserts that they are made of the finest cowhide. The onlooking buyers are amazed to see that the Duke of Sabier's daughter is bargaining like a commoner. The seller irritably agrees to sell the gloves for 30 rubles and does not intend to make any more concessions. The girl is delighted that she managed to agree on a good price and considers herself the winner. She blushes and presses her lips together, thinking about how she disgraced herself right in front of the Baron. The Baron and the disguised girl walk silently along the cobbled street. The girl sadly notes that the Baron did not say a word during their entire journey. Inwardly, she blames her clothes and behavior for the Baron's possible disappointment. The Baron suddenly laughs, looking at her warmly and taking her hands. With a trembling voice, she turns to the Baron, and he apologizes for his sudden laughter. The girl timidly asks if he has disappointed the Baron, and he, in surprise, asks again how exactly. She guiltily admits that she dressed up as a man, abandoned her elegance, and even argued with the salesperson. The Baron admits that he was surprised. The girl tells herself that she expected such an outcome. The girl stands shyly in front of her interlocutor, hears a compliment, and feels her fears disappear. She reproaches herself, considering herself not worthy enough compared to other women. Erodia pressed herself, trying to surprise him. The main character realizes that the Baron saw her as a real, sincere girl from the very beginning. The heroine thinks that she herself was creating unnecessary worries and rushing events. Erodia smiles sincerely and admits that the Baron's words make her infinitely happy. The Baron jokingly says that a mustache suits her, to which she shyly asks him not to tease her. He asks about the reason for the visit, and the girl explains that she came to prepare for the hunting festival. The Baron, standing against the backdrop of the sunset, listens in surprise to the heroine's request to help with her business, because she wants to spend more time with him. The girl cheerfully offers to help with choosing a costume, assuring him that she has excellent taste, and receives consent to her help. She asks to be called simply by her first name. The man, slightly embarrassed, calls the girl by her name, Erodia, and she smiles happily. The blonde notes to himself that this is the same unusual lady in men's clothing, but admits that she is very cute. A girl in a green dress with an umbrella stands among the foliage, looking around in surprise. There is a lively scene on the street. People are chatting. One person is carrying a tall stack of books. The line sounds wonderful. Someone's silhouette suggests that His Majesty put a lot of effort into organizing the hunting festival. A young man among the trees responds to his sister's appeal with a smile. The girl laughs at the fact that her brother brought a mountain of books with him. The Emperor meets Eri, says he is glad to see her, and notes that she looks even more beautiful today. The girl, surrounded by flowers, presses her hand to her chest with a slight smile and admits that the words spoken are a great honor for her. The two men cheerfully discuss how all men are enchanted by the heroine and advise the Baron to be on his guard. A group of people notice that the one they consider the main contender appears. The men present repeat in surprise. Someone calls him the main contender. The blond man with yellow eyes politely greets His Majesty, introducing himself as Edward Adrian. The young man in white says that he is glad to see so many outstanding people of his country. A young woman and a young man are told that they look like a perfect couple inside a gold-decorated frame. The man asks the girl with concern if everything is okay with her. The heroine, smiling, asks the Baron how he is doing. The blonde watches the couple and notes to himself that their relationship is developing faster than he expected. The man, with a thoughtful smile, decides that it is time to remove all obstacles. At the meeting, it is announced that the rules of the competition remain the same. The winner will be the one who catches the most valuable prey, and the judges will be the dukes and the main organizer. This year, as the presenter reports, the winner of the festival will receive a special award. The reward will be a golden sculpture of Jesus' hand, decorated with precious stones, and with the ring of the first Emperor Bjorn. The true value of Jesus' hand lies in this ring, which belonged to the founder of the dynasty. This ring symbolizes belonging to the imperial family and is the most important treasure of the empire. The participants are discussing why nothing was said about the main contender for this prize. Some people wonder if the whole festival was really just for one person. Someone remarks with interest about the so-called main contender, outlining his plans with a mysterious smile. The girl holds out a precious stone in her palms and asks the Baron to take it. She wishes Edward a safe and successful hunt. The heroine is worried about choosing a gift, but is glad that she was able to find something worthy. The young man says goodbye to Erodia and goes hunting, holding the sword and pendant with him. Under the blue sky, the announcement of the beginning of the hunting festival sounds. The girl is irritated by what is happening around her. At the table, women watch closely and discuss the heroine's possible marriage to the Baron. The heroine categorically notes that her relationship with the Baron concerns only the two of them. She is internally outraged by the excessive attention of others and clearly demonstrates this with a gesture. The girl feels awkward under the gaze of a large number of people. Everyone knows about their engagement, but in reality, behind the appearances, there is something personal and special between them. The girl is worried that if the wedding doesn't take place, everyone will consider it a complete failure. She thinks that even if there had been another bride in her place, the Baron would still have fulfilled his duty. The heroine imagines that he would be just as kind and smile just as much at another girl. Standing under the umbrella, she admits to herself that she can't stop thinking about it, even though she thinks it's stupid. She realizes with surprise that she had never worried about such things before. The girl falls on the grass in despair and exclaims why organizing a wedding is so difficult. The suddenly appearing blonde looks at the girl standing with her back to him with an umbrella. She turns around in shock and wonders why this man is here. A young man is interested in learning about a rare plant from Wallaby's geological record. He has completely forgotten about the festival and is happily rejoicing that today will be a successful day. Baron Adrian sits on his horse, holding a fox in his arms, and his surprised friend turns to him. In the forest, a dialogue takes place where one man is interested in another's hunting, and the other admits that he is not too keen on it, after which he is asked what he is holding in his hands. The Baron shows the fox cub, which causes surprise, and the question of whether he caught it. The man explains that the fox cub followed him on its own, and he decided to take it into the tent to protect it from danger. He says that the animal reminds her of someone. The Baron assumes that the fox cub will please Lady Erodia. As a child, the heroine really wanted a dog, but she was never allowed to have one, which made her very sad. The brother imagines how happy his sister will be to see the fox cub, and mentally sees her happy face. The girl stands in the forest, confused, wondering what this strange situation is. She looks away and wonders why he is here. The girl anxiously wonders if he recognizes her. The man warns her about walking alone, and she worries that if her father finds out about her foray, he will lock her out of the house for a whole month. The heroine notices that the man is wearing an elegant pendant with a purple stone that she has never seen before. A blonde man warns a young lady about the dangers of walking alone in the woods. The girl ironically thanks him for warning her about the dangers of wild animals, and the man decides that he better leave, since she is apparently busy because of the festival. The blonde man states outright that he is not at all interested in the hunting festival. The red-haired girl notices that he seems to be very interested in other people's things. A man has just insulted a baron, and his interlocutor asks if he means to say that the hunting festival organized by His Majesty is all a setup. The blonde man, with a fake smile, declares that he would never allow himself to speak badly about an event held by the emperor. He admits that he simply doesn't want to participate in something where he has no chance of winning, and the girl wonders if this is just an excuse for a lack of courage. The blonde hears the reproach that he is simply changing everything to suit his own convenient position. She reminds them that each participant in the hunt is trying their best and wonders if the words of the other person do not offend them. The man is accused of not putting in any effort but looking down on others. The girl says she has nothing more to say to someone who devalues the work of others. She apologizes to him and leaves, and he addresses her as young lady. The girl turns around and hears a question about whether they have met before. Eridia says he hasn't made his debut in high society yet. The man puts his hand to his chest and asks for forgiveness. The hem of the girl's dress flutters as she quickly walks away. Eridia looks at the fox with admiration and asks where such a cute little animal came from, and the maid replies that the baron brought him. The fox cub reaches for the hand, while someone asks where the baron himself is and whether he went into the forest again. The girl holds the fox in her arms and learns that the baron came to see her in person, but since she was not there, he immediately returned. Eridia asks with concern if the baron is hurt, and is relieved when she learns that he is in good spirits, expressing confidence that the baron will return with a magnificent haul. The emperor asks what the baron has caught during all this time. The young man proudly informs His Majesty that he has caught a fox and a rabbit, to which he receives a surprised question as to why he is so proud of this. Although this is the first hunting festival, a fox and a rabbit are too small a prey. The heroine notices that too many people are watching what is happening, and this is turning into a problem. The two men discuss that if the baron wins, the reaction will be immediate. Baron Adrian, dressed in elegant clothes, is depicted against a golden glow, with a caption stating that he was there to ensure that the meaning of the festival was properly understood. Reflections on the fact that it is not the baron's lack of skill that is the problem, but rather that he simply does not understand the essence and importance of the hunting festival, with an admission of error in assessing how far the baron is from high society. The emperor stands in front of the enraged bear and wonders what to do. He realizes with a frightened face that he doesn't have time to dodge the blow. Edward steps between the bear and the blonde, preparing to defend himself. Blood from the bear's wound flows through the air and falls in drops to the ground. The baron's bloody sword is thrust into the ground. A man rushes into the camp and reports that His Majesty has been attacked by a bear. The girl is shocked and is told that Baron Adrian fought the bear alone. The maid calls for Milady, who starts to run, and the servant reports that the emperor's physician and the knights have already left for the scene. The girl kneels in the grass, receiving assurances that no one was seriously hurt. They support her by the hand. She tearfully admits that she was afraid for the baron, and hears that everything will be fine with him. Her brother comes and asks what she is doing here. He carefully hugs the pale Airy and asks Martha to bring her something warm. Airy covers her mouth with her hands in confusion, fearing that something might have happened to Baron Adrian. The girl tries to convince herself to believe in Baron Adrian. She turns her back, mentally repeating that he will be okay. Silhouettes of horsemen appear in the forest, and someone notices that they are returning. A man with blonde hair, dressed in a dress uniform, appears on horseback. Edward emerges from the shadows of the forest, his clothes covered in blood, breathing heavily and holding his hand over his chest. Iridia rushes after him and sees him dismounting from his horse. The Baron asks Iridia in surprise why she is here. She rushes and hugs him tightly. He looks at her with a soft smile and notices that she was very worried. The girl anxiously asks the man if he is injured anywhere. The man assures her that he is not wounded, but the girl does not believe him, seeing the blood on him. She admits that she was afraid for him and worried that something might happen to him. Edward gently grabs her hand and places it on his face, asking if she will continue to insist that he is not okay. The man tenderly hugs the girl and thinks about how glad he is that everything worked out. The emperor jokingly asks if she is sure that everything is okay with him, and the girl reacts to this question with embarrassment. She muses that the very fact that the man is riding a horse is proof that he is okay, even though the fight with the bear was only violent in name. The frame shows a bloody sword. A huge bear falls heavily to the ground with a loud sound. Edward stands with his sword, asking His Majesty if he is wounded. The emperor notes with amazement that this is incredible. The blonde looks at the fallen bear with a serious face and mentally notes that it was killed with one blow. He reasons that there could not have been a better performance. A man with a sword and bloodstains is depicted as the newly determined winner of the festival. Edward Adrian is asked to come to them. Someone points out that no one would be against the champion being the man who single-handedly killed the bear. In recognition of his services in saving the emperor's life, Baron Hadrian receives Jesus' hand in marriage and the title of Viscount. Baron Adrian bends his knee and says he must refuse. The emperor asks whether the honor shown to him is really insufficient and demands an explanation. The man asks to be allowed to pass on the privileges he has received to the woman who has supported him for a long time, his aunt. The blonde internally notes how unexpected it is to give the title that everyone dreams of to his aunt. The emperor thinks with a smile that, as he expected, he did not disappoint him. Aunt officially takes the title of Viscountess in place of Baron Adrian. The hunting festival ends earlier than expected. Despite this, those around you do not advise anyone to get upset. The head assures that this spring will be incredibly exciting for the main characters. News of the events of the hunting festival spreads like wildfire throughout the empire. The story of the champion's request, which led to the appearance of a new viscountess, becomes a legend, and the man kneels before the woman, kissing her hand. The news of the unusual rise of a common woman to the nobility caused delight and awe among the noble ladies, who enthusiastically discussed her success. At the same time, many members of the aristocracy expressed dissatisfaction with the fact that a peasant woman had suddenly become a viscountess. When they met at the table, two elegantly dressed ladies discussed what His Majesty was thinking about when he allowed such a decision. The sophisticated interior echoes calls for calm in the current situation. The woman assures her interlocutors that she understands their feelings perfectly, but it is impossible to argue with the royal decree. At the same time, the dialogue emphasizes that such a woman herself would never renounce the title, unless she was forced to do so by circumstances. The Marquise responds to the royal person's appeal. The royal person asks the Marchioness whether her second son is an archbishop. She shares her desire to invite him to bless the upcoming engagement ceremony. On the day of the engagement, Music plays in the open air, and guests gather for the ceremony under a flower arch, preceded by a performance by musicians. The woman in the lilac dress tells the maid that she is completely numb from nerves. The girl in the white dress thinks she has forgotten how to breathe and admits that it is a problem. She imagines herself announcing to everyone that she and Edward now belong to each other, and her heart fills with happiness. Two women watch with a slight grin as the heroine worries about ruining the engagement ceremony due to her nervousness. Her friends hug her, advising her to stop thinking too much at such moments. The encouraged girl resolutely rushes forward. She heads towards the exit of the room, following the advice not to hide inside. In the garden, she sees a man in a white suit and is instructed to find someone who will take her hand. The man gently takes her hand and says that he has been waiting for her. Against the backdrop of a stained glass arch and flowers, he notices that she looks nervous, to which she, smiling happily, admits that she is a little worried. The girl goes outside and feels even more worried. Seeing the huge number of people gathered, she is amazed, as if the whole empire had gathered. She tries to calm herself down by thinking about the upcoming engagement ceremony. With a determined look, she promises herself to make it clear to everyone that Edward belongs to her. The girl happily thinks about how she will put an end to the interest of high society in Edward, making him unattainable for others. Someone asks in surprise what they mean. The heroine is alarmed to learn that the archbishop will not be able to attend the ceremony. At this moment, a cry is heard about the rain that has started and what will happen to the ceremony. Edward manages to catch Aridia, protecting her from the rain as everyone rushes to take shelter in the estate. Someone shouts that the tent is about to collapse under the pressure of the elements. Someone shouts to all the guests to take shelter in the estate from the approaching rain. The erosions indicate the direction she should go to find shelter from the weather. The girl's eyes reflect sadness that the grand engagement ceremony that everyone was waiting for is being interrupted. The white rose in the rain symbolizes the ceremony's moment of glory that never happened. Someone asks about Aridia's condition, to which the answer is that she is, understandably, in a state of shock. A close-up of the girl's face is shown, as she was so eagerly awaiting the engagement ceremony. She remembers dreaming about this moment every day, and begs him to let her wake up if this is a nightmare. A voice is heard from behind the door, asking permission to enter Aridia. The Baron receives permission and enters the room. He notices traces of tears on her face. Edward reassures Aridia, asking her not to worry too much about what happened today. The girl is worried that even if they hold the ceremony again, the weather may interfere with them again. The man in the blue suit speculates that the weather could have been a coincidence, but it is strange that the archbishop suddenly failed to come. Edward gravely notes that he has never heard of an archbishop missing an engagement ceremony. Aridia does not believe in coincidences and feels that someone deliberately arranged the disruption of the ceremony. The lying girl is addressed with the words, "Milady." The maid reports that a letter has arrived from the Baron and asks if she really does not want to read it. The maid waits anxiously for her mistress, awaiting an answer. A week has passed since the failed engagement ceremony, and the ball season is approaching, causing excitement among the aristocracy. The atmosphere around Duke Xavier becomes tense, like walking on thin ice. Since the failed engagement ceremony, the family's only daughter has locked herself in a room behind a massive door. Aridia, clutching the letter, feels the weight of Edward's loss and knows she must see him as soon as possible. The maid stands at the door with a sign, holding a tray, and thinks that the mistress deliberately did not read all the letters, but really wants to meet Edward. Aridia, depicted in a funny childish style, sits among scattered letters and cries, screaming that she has reached the limit of her strength. The girl, her nose buried in the envelope, asks hesitantly, "Do you even want to meet me, Edward?" Aridia's gaze drops down as she feels Edward's coldness towards her, even though it's not her fault. Under a heavy impression, she thinks that perhaps Edward is tired of her and is already considering calling off the engagement. Suddenly, a voice is heard behind the door. "The Baron is here," and Aridia repeats to herself in horror. "Edward." Fear-stricken, Aridia orders Marta to tell the Baron that she cannot meet and is feeling unwell. Standing by the half-open door, Aridia whispers to herself that she doesn't have the courage to go out and see Edward right now. The girl is shocked as a mysterious voice addresses her, which she takes for Edward's voice. Aridia panics and wonders what Edward is doing here, And if he could have heard something, Edward asks, sadly in his voice, if she has come to hate him. Iridia, with tears in her eyes, exclaims that this is not so. The girl tries to explain haltingly that this is not true at all. Edward invites her to go into town with him. Iridia is enthusiastic about the idea of going to the market for a change of scenery. Suddenly, she remembers that their engagement has become the main topic of conversation in town. She points to her simple clothes and says that she will need time to get ready and also needs to get her father's permission. Edward replies that she doesn't need to dress up, which surprises her. Iridia, walking around the city, reflects that besides dresses, there are other things that suit her. She is horrified to realize that she is going on a date with Edward again, and that it was he who asked her out for the first time. The girl thinks that Edward is very polite for asking her father's permission and wonders why he tries so hard. Looking at Edward, she thinks that she expected his anger, but instead, he asked her out on a date. She worries that if things continue this way, her expectations of him will become too high. On a crowded street, Edward asks Herodias to take his hand. Iridia agrees, and, holding his hand, thinks that it is impossible not to have expectations when he is so kind. The two of them walk along a sun-drenched path along the water. Iridia is surprised to realize that she is having a lot of fun, and even the cotton candy seems tastier than usual. She reflects on how she was recently sitting in her room in a depressed mood, and now she is happy. Edward asks Iridia if she is feeling better, and she happily confirms that she is. He explains that he decided to cheer her up by inviting her to the market, as he remembered that she liked it there last time. Iridia thanks him and says that he must have been sad too. Edward says he did this walk to cheer them both up, but there's more to it. He hands the surprised Iridia a box with a ring, saying that he always wanted to give it to her. Recalling past events, he says that the situation was hopeless. As he places the ring on her finger, he says it's natural to feel down when an engagement ceremony doesn't go as planned. Edward tells Iridia that he wants to devote his entire life to her. He smiles and suggests that this is like a continuation of their engagement ceremony. Iridia shyly and happily asks him to take care of her. Iridia, holding Edward's hand at sunset, suddenly remembers their first meeting. In her memory, the red sunset created a halo of light around Edward as he stood surrounded by flowers. It was this moment that made her fall in love with Edward at first sight. And now, again under the rays of the sunset, they stand together, and rose petals flutter around them. They seal their lifelong promise by smiling happily and holding hands. Iridia is overwhelmed with happiness and thinks that there could not be a better engagement ceremony. At this time, the couple is observed by a stranger who recognizes Baron Adrian and his companion. Iridia, enjoying the sunny day, happily thinks that today the sun is shining brighter than usual. In a conversation with another woman, she suggests that it is simply the ring sparkling and expresses the hope that the weather at the ball will be just as beautiful. Edward and Iridia are planning to attend the spring ball at the Imperial Palace, which will be a wonderful opportunity for them to renew their wedding vows. The maid worriedly asks the upset Iridia what happened, because in the morning she was so happy to meet the Baron. Iridia dances with Edward and is amazed by his talent, wondering if there is anything he can't do. Iridia complains to the maid Martha that the problem is that Edward looks amazing not only to her, but to everyone around him, including the dance instructor. She panics, imagining that if things continue like this, everyone at the ball will fall in love with Edward. Iridia, with a determined and slightly crazy look, declares that she will not allow this. She decides that for the rest of the ball, she is the only one allowed to hold Edward's hand. Arriving at the ball, Iridia is surprised by its splendor and beauty. A man with reddish hair approaches her and remarks that he heard how happy she was to come in with the Baron. He smirks as he notices that she is now holding his hand, which he is honored to do. But Iridia explains that she had no choice due to the presence of someone more important. She looks at the woman in the blue dress with a pattern of roses and thinks that high society really needs a breath of fresh air. The guests are excited by the announcement of the arrival of His Majesty the Emperor and Empress, and the event is about to begin. The Emperor and Empress, dressed in luxurious attire, appear before the guests in all their glory. The Empress, surrounded by red roses, gives the impression of being a truly extraordinary person. Iridia is angry at how smug the Empress looks for wanting to call off her engagement, and decides not to let her have her way this time. Finally, the most long-awaited guest arrives, and the imperial couple turns their gaze to the lady in the blue dress. The emperor graciously allows Lady Heberion to raise her head. The emperor solemnly announces to all present that he grants the title of Viscountess to Lady Heberion, who stands before him. He explains that the title is in recognition of Edward Hadrian's service in saving his life during a hunting festival. Aridia proudly thinks that having a man like Edward in the empire is a great honor, and that his connections with important people make the empire's future even brighter. The empress looks tense as she reflects on the fact that Edward is no longer a commoner, but a baron with a great future, connected to the Viscount's family and holding the post of vice admiral of the fleet. Sooner or later, Edward will bring changes to the empire. Aridia and those present at the ball are sure of this. The era of privileged nobility is coming to an end. Aridia thinks that the empress will probably keep her sour expression until the end of the event. Edward notices that Aridia's face is very red. He asks if she is nervous. Aridia admits that she is a little nervous, as this is her first official ball, and notes to herself that Edward is very experienced in such events. Edward says he didn't realize it right away, because she rarely shows her charms, but today she looks amazing. Aridia thanks him, noting that the Baron looks great as well, and thinks to herself that only an experienced man could say such a compliment with a straight face. Brian Bercy, the eldest son of the Viscount Bercy family, approaches them, introduces himself, and expresses his joy at meeting Miss Xavier. When Erodia greets him back, he mentions that he didn't have a chance to talk to her during the hunting festival. Aridia is surprised to see a crowd suddenly gathering around Baron Adrian. Enthusiastic fans vied with each other to express their admiration for the Baron, saying that they had always admired him and had heard a lot about his achievements at the hunting festival. Edward realizes that the situation has exceeded all his expectations. Erodia notes with a slight chuckle that at least all the fans are men, which makes the situation a little funny. She calls out to Edward, who says that he will be leaving for a short time to visit his family. Edward says goodbye to her, saying see you soon. The two ladies, watching this scene, understand why Miss Xavier chose the Baron, noting that he is indeed a reliable man, and make a prediction. They discuss the fact that the Baron may even be too good for the princess, because he is handsome and talented, and there is no noble lady who would not want to be with him. Now everyone sees the Baron as a very enviable groom, and one of the ladies notes that due to the large age difference between him and the princess, there will be many noble ladies who are ready to wait for him even after the wedding. The young lady from high society, despite her new status, resolutely declares that she will not refuse the Baron, realizing what she is currently lacking. Aridia panics and grabs Lelia's hand, exclaiming that she urgently needs real experience. Lelia asks Erodia where the Baron is, reminding her that she knows everything about love. Aridia begs Lelia for help and convinces her that the matter is extremely serious. They enter the room and Lelia asks what happened. Aridia, out of breath, says that of all her acquaintances, it is Lelia who understands such situations best, and asks to explain everything in order. Aridia, with her mouth open, screams that she seems to be falling in love with Edward. Lelia is surprised to note that Aridia had not realized this before. Lelia states that she was sure of her feelings for a long time, and Erodia understands that no one could not notice it. Someone quietly holds back laughter, thinking that if he laughs now, it will all end. Aridia, blushing, is amazed that even her brothers noticed her feelings. A man tenderly kisses a tearful woman wearing a wreath. The girls argue, and one exclaims that not everyone knows their secret. The red-haired girl confesses to Lelia that something is wrong with her. She compares the heavy feeling in her chest with someone else's happiness. The girl admits that sometimes she is overwhelmed by strong disappointment. The internal monologue continues. She questions whether anxiety can be true love, while her friend watches her thoughtfully. The friend is amazed at how the heroine has changed, looking at her embarrassed face among the shimmering flowers. My friend says she now understands what exactly is bothering her. There is a suggestion to continue the conversation at home. The fair-haired man, casually leaning on the balustrade, remarks with a sly smile that he has just heard something interesting. He looks at the portrait of the girl and thinks about how her voice changes when she talks about her fiancé. A red-haired girl with a lace umbrella walks through the snow, and her voice does not sound as wary as it does during arguments. A man with blonde hair stands with his back to the viewer and enviously thinks about how lucky some men are to hear the passionate voice of a woman in love. The blonde man sadly suggests that she probably doesn't even want to see him. Against the backdrop of a luxurious hall, thoughts of a man who speaks empty words and mocks those around him sound. Two society ladies are talking, and one of them describes a man who plays as casually as he talks. The blonde man with purple eyes holds a glass of wine and smirks smugly, sure that she despises people like him. The reflection of a girl in a glass of wine haunts the thoughts of a man who can't stop thinking about what she looks like when she's in love. The man dreams of her looking at him with her green eyes, and his image turns green for a moment. The red-haired girl, exhausted, lowers her head onto the table and complains of fatigue. The red-haired girl panics and realizes that she has forgotten her status as a public figure, equal to Edward's. She thinks sadly about the fact that she never got to dance with Edward in the end. Her dressy heels sit on the floor as she laments that this was her first social event. The backdrop of the piano in the richly decorated room suggests that the ball was not just a demonstration of the power of the aristocratic faction. She genuinely wanted to enjoy her first ball, as shown by the example of the dancing couple's legs. In the flashback, she dances with the blue-haired Edward, whom she trained so hard to dance with. The girl resolutely walks out onto the night balcony and extends her hand, intending to invite someone to dance. The sudden question of whether she really wanted to see him that much takes her by surprise, and her face contorts in shock. The blonde man hugs her from behind and asks with a smirk if she really wanted to meet him that much. He leans down to her face and, smirking, calls her hopeless. The blonde man, shocked and confused, asks why she is here. The red-haired girl, trembling, apologizes, says that she was mistaken, and asks him to leave. Her furious blow wounds the man, leaving wounds on him. A blonde man watches with sadness in his eyes as a red-haired girl walks away against the backdrop of a brightly lit window. A one-eyed man interrupts another couple's conversation with a smirk, while the first blonde man reproaches the dark-haired girl for breaking the agreement. The blonde man walks away into the glowing mist, disappointed to think that this was not the reaction he wanted to see. He admits that he wanted to know everything about her, both her angry face and her laughing voice. The man realizes with pain that her tear-stained face was the one thing he never wanted to see. A red-haired girl in tears is outraged by the rudeness of a man who hugged her without asking, just like he did at their first meeting. She looks into the distance at Edward and realizes that he is the one she really needs. The girl is puzzled why this man is standing next to him. The red-haired girl resolutely approaches the dark-haired man, causing surprise in the brunette who is watching them. The brunette asks the suddenly pale girl what happened to her. The girl replies that it is she who should ask what is wrong. She angrily shouts to her rival that Edward is her fiancé, no matter how much she clings to him. Edward watches in shock as his fiancé loudly announces their engagement and future marriage. Against the backdrop of the mansion at night, a proud announcement is made that she will become the wife of Baron Adrian. The red-haired girl, with a nervous smile, restrains herself from shouting her feelings in public. Rumors spread about Lady Sabier's jealousy, which makes Baron Adrian's life a living hell. The guests whisper that she even quarreled with the Viscountess at court, and they pity the poor Baron, who does not know who he is dealing with. Against a backdrop of red spider lilies, a man hugs a blonde girl, and in his thoughts, there is a suggestion that he still yearns for his ex-fiancée. The queen, dressed in a lush outfit, covers her mouth with her hand, fearing that people might spread rumors. The red-haired girl shakes her head in despair, assuring herself that she would never do such a thing. The blue-haired man clenches his jaw and decides that, for now, he just has to endure it. The red-haired girl is surprised by the announcement of a guest's arrival and asks to let him in. A smiling blonde guest politely asks if she is too early. Lelia, beaming with joy, hugs the excited red-haired girl, explaining that she hurried to her after noticing her anxiety. Over a cup of tea, Lelia, with a sly smile, asks her friend since when she realized that she was in love with the Baron. The embarrassed redhead asks her to stop teasing, but her friend insists it's just curiosity. The girl ponders when her feelings began and realizes that it happened long before Edward's proposal. The girl remembers how her heart almost stopped when the wounded Edward, splattered with blood, held her in his arms. She thinks about the moment she was crushed to learn that Edward had a fiancé. In another memory, her heart was pounding wildly as she was in his arms. A sudden realization makes her blush and wonder if it was love at first sight. Confused by Lilia's teasing, she panics and asks what she should do now that she has realized her feelings. Lilia advises her to confess to the Baron, which causes the girl to have a vivid imagination, where she shouts about her love with a bouquet of blue roses. The girl doubts, objecting that traditionally it is the man who should confess his love to the woman. She imagines a woman dropping her handkerchief in front of a man, but instead sees a man's boot stepping on it. In her dreams, a man lifts the handkerchief and tenderly says her name, but this fantasy shatters like glass. She realizes with horror that this old-fashioned approach will do nothing to convey her feelings to him. The girl doubts whether she should openly express her feelings, even if those around her believe that frankness is important in a relationship. The girl receives advice from an older woman that the brave always achieve what they want, and she is wished good luck. A girl talks to a horse in a stable and reflects that showing feelings in practice is more difficult than talking about them. Laughing, the girl agrees to go for a walk with the horse to unwind and clear her mind. But she still has doubts. The heroine compares two men. One of them, Fabian, immediately reveals his emotions, and Edward is always reserved. The girl mentally admires her fiancé, considering him ideal and cold-blooded. She admits to herself that only his presence makes her heart beat faster, and she thinks that these feelings are unique to her. On the way out for a walk, she notices that she has gone too far and decides to turn back. Someone tells her that a performance will soon begin in the square, inviting her not to miss this event. She rides on horseback and justifies her presence by saying that she is simply investigating romantic confessions. The girl is surprised that there are many more people in the square than she expected, perhaps due to the popularity of the play. A smiling, fair-haired young man approaches her, saying in a friendly manner that they have met again. The girl with the horse walks away, and the guy calls her to stop. He catches up with her, says they need to talk, and apologizes for what happened that day. The guy sincerely apologizes for his rudeness, explaining that in the dark, he mistook her for another person and did not want to offend her. The girl mentally mocks his words, but after a short pause, she agrees to accept the apology. The guy happily thanks her for her generosity, and the girl clarifies that she has not yet officially forgiven him. The performance begins in the square, and on stage, one of the actors with a sword declares his determination to follow his own path. The girl notices that the show has started and thinks that she was just about to tell the guy not to talk anymore, but he is enthusiastically waiting for the performance. A man in the shadows asks a girl if she likes the work of a famous writer, and she responds by thinking that it is impossible not to like his books. The stage unfolds the story of a warrior who, from a slave gladiator, turned into a hero who saved the continent, which brought glory to his creator. Like many beloved stories, this one ends with the couple happily reunited. The girl thoughtfully notes that this would be an excellent reason for an ideal confession. In the scene on the platform, the woman, in tears, promises to wait for her lover's return, no matter how long it takes, and to love him for the rest of her life. The narrator explains that the passionate confession was addressed not to the village girl he met, but to a beautiful princess worthy of standing next to the hero. The story then moves on to the girl who shouted out a confession that no one will ever remember. The girl cries from the heartbreaking scene, and the blonde enthusiastically exclaims how touching it is. Holding out the handkerchief, he reflects that if there is no hope for a happy ending in love, then it is better not to fall in love at all. The girl thinks with irritation about how frivolously the blonde talks about such things. The blonde guy thoughtfully admits that she might be right, and love really isn't that simple.